Welcome back to Programming with Qt Widgets. This, I promise, will be a short episode. I will basically tell you what not to use in Qt. So, shall we just get started? Qt has been inspired, at least in the early days, a lot by what the windowing system on Linux, namely KDE, needed. KDE is implemented in Qt, and a lot of time people come to me and say, hey Jesper, I want to be involved in Qt, where do I get started? And I always tell them, go and look at KDE. There's lots of good opportunities to contribute with Qt code in KDE. Okay, that was besides the point. KDE was itself inspired by the even older window managers at the time. We're talking about here in the early 1990s. And one of the features that they had was the ability to change color scheme. So your stereotypical company secretary, she could get a really pinkish color scheme. I actually worked at a university back then where that was exactly the requirements. While people that had a tendency to Depeche Mode and new wave music and a black view on life, they could get a more dark color scheme. That was me. And that is where the concept of color themes and palettes in Qt were born. At least that's how I see or remember or whatever the story behind that.
Lambda expression, move semantics, coroutines, modules. Oh, there are so many things in C++ that you do not know about if you're on C++ 98 still. It's no shame to be on C++ 98, but it might make sense to migrate your code. Which part is important for you to migrate to? Which should you just, throg out and say, let the other kids play with that? We can help you decide. Talk to us.
Imagine me being an artist, and maybe we can ask AI to modify this here. I'm standing with a palette. That's the thing that I take my paintbrush and dip in with different colors. That's a palette. It took me 10 years before I realized that palette was actually an English word. So that's a service information for those of you not native English speaking. So a palette consists of 3 color groups, and each color group has a number of colors in them. That's what the group part of color group indicate. We have the enabled color group, we have the disabled color group, and we have the inactive color group. The enabled, that's when your widgets are regular active. So that's a checkbox that you can check, for example. It has keyboard focus, then it's enabled. Then the other one is called inactive. Was that the 3 words I used? Inactive is at least the other one. That's when it do not have keyboard focus. So your checkbox might look slightly different if it do not have the keyboard focus. And then finally inactive, that's when you call set enable false on a widget. So my palette consists of 3 different color groups. Each color group has a number of colors with named roles. So there's the foreground color, the text color, the selected text color, and so on. And the idea, at least back in the days, was that with these, I think there's 15 different color roles, you would be able to paint any widget. And of course, that doesn't work that well. I've seen people that try to get a night mode from doing this, but I don't think you're going to cut it into night mode by just changing the color groups. For that, you'd likely need to change the style. I will maybe talk about style in this series here, but that's going to be way later on. Until then, and here's a picture of David Four, one of my co-workers, who actually put out a mini series, I believe, or at least a longer episode on what is QStyle and how does that work. Go and get some inspiration from there. So in terms of Qt, we have a palette that's represented by the class QPalette. It consists of a number of color groups. So if you want to draw something, you go and get your hands on the palette of the widget that you want to draw, and you will then change colors in that color group, or in the color group that you're interested in, maybe in all three of them. And the code looks like this. And this is for changing, I think, let's just see. So I'll go to my widget, ask for the palette. I will create a red color. I will set the active color group, the window color in that active color group, to be that red color. And now I will set the brush to be red for the window that's along all of the groups. So this one up here was only for the active one. So that was the one where it had keyboard focus. And then set the palette back. I can change the palette of all the widgets in my application by, or at least those that haven't had it set explicit, by calling set palette on Qt application. What you see here is from the Qt documentation. They say that an image is worth 1,000 words. So that's what we have here. You can see a screenshot of something that has the number of roles indicated. So the selection, for example, here is highlighted text, and highlight is the colors that are used for the highlighted text and for the highlight. So if you want to change that, then, well, change these roles in all of the palette or the color groups that you're interested in. And similar, changing the window text and the window can be done like this. And you scroll down here, you can see the number of roles, and yeah, that wasn't all that many roles. And to be honest, when I look at this, and the few times when I've tried to do something really custom, I have been sitting for quite a while pondering, well, which of these should I be using? Because when you create your own widget, at least in the very early days, we would preach to people that you shouldn't just be taking a pen out and decide on a color and start painting that. You should instead go to the palette and ask for a color role that match what you want to do. But with these few colors, that can be rather tricky, I'd say. What you more often want to do to change the whole user interface is to implement your own styles. Way, way harder, trust me. I've seen people do it. I haven't done myself, but gives you much more flexibility. So why are we talking about all of this? Well, I'll give you a challenge. You can let me know in the comment below if you give up on it, and I might provide you with the source code. But I would like you to take out of the toolbox, out of Qt, a push button and change the background color to be red. Rather difficult. Well, you know what to do. I'm going to give you the answer. You need to change the palette. So you go to the push button, you ask for its palette. Then in the button role, you will set it to be red, to have that push button be of red color. You likely even need to set the set autofill background to be true. And why is all that so difficult? Well, because of this whole setup with palettes. Of course, you shouldn't be running around changing the background color of your push button, but imagine that you somehow just needed a poor man's version of indicating, hey, you forgot to fill out this checkbox here, and you want to have a red something in there. Then these were the steps that you needed to take. Let's end the episode here. It's not a yay, we learned something awesome, because it isn't all that awesome. I have more often found that it's in the way than it's helping me with anything, and I might just be using Qt the completely wrong way in my 25 years of experience with Qt, but who knows. In any way, until we see next time. And next time we'll talk about the painting operations that you have on your Qt Painter. And until then, have a great time.